Welcome to What the Health, an independent approach to your health span. Have you noticed how our healthcare system may not have your best interest in mind? Join Dr. Eckel in this fun and sometimes disturbing exploration of the state of healthcare and what it means for you. Now, here's your host, Dr. Eckel.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I am Dr. Greg Eckel, and this is What the Health. Our topic today is how to use essential oils for brain health, and I have my esteemed guest and colleague, Dr. Eric Zielinski, on the air with us, and he is the author of the national bestseller, The Healing Power of Essential Oils, and is upcoming The Essential Oils Apothecary. Dr. Z has pioneered natural living and biblical health education since 2003. Trained as an aromatherapist, public health researcher, and chiropractor, Dr. Z started naturallivingfamily.com in 2014 with his wife. Power duo couple there, really educating millions of people on how to learn how to use natural remedies like essential oils safely and effectively. Their site is now visited by more than 3 million natural health seekers every year. Naturallivingfamily.com has rapidly become the #1 online source for biblical health and non-branded essential oils education. Welcome aboard, Dr. Z.
Well, thank you for having me, my friend. It is an honor and a privilege. I love what you're doing. It's so needed. And I mean, so much so that I devoted an entire chapter of my book to it. And I can't wait to dive into this topic, really.
Now, before we go too deep, I want to start kind of on that meta level. And from the top, give us some background on what essential oils are and just how they become such a part of modern life. Like they're really everywhere at this point.
I call them God's medicine. And ultimately, there's a verse in the Bible that says the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. Well, that's literal. And there's something to be said about what compounds are in plants, like what makes lavender help people sleep better and what makes oregano herb so potent to fighting infection. And there are components to that, plant-based chemicals. Now, we hear a lot about bioactive compounds in the context of antioxidants, polyphenols, the things that boost your immune system. But essential oils are actually bioactive compounds, which means it's a fancy word for saying you don't need them to live, but they really make you healthy. And the research has actually shown that people that have a diet and a lifestyle low in bioactive compounds will be suboptimally healthy. And that's important because you focus, and I don't want this to be a nutrition class, but we super hyper focus on carbs, fats, proteins, even vitamins and minerals as like you need these essential nutrients to live. But what about fiber? Like that's not an essential nutrient, but if you don't eat fiber, your digestive system is going to be angry at you. What about those polyphenols and carotenoids? What about those essential oils that help your immune system and your body function optimally? So ultimately, when you put your nose into a rose and you smell your favorite herbs, those volatile organic compounds that are being emitted from the plants, those are the essential oils. And when you distill them down, and if you're watching in a video or if you're listening, you might have seen an essential oil bottle. But if you're looking at this video right now, this bottle that you're looking at is roughly 3 pounds of lavender flowers.
Wow.
That's hard to conceptualize when one flower, one blossom, one leaf is lighter than air. That's why you get this concentrated plant-based compounds together. And truthfully, this is plant-based medicine. And where I come from, I love supplements. I love nutrition, mind-body exercises, prayer, meditation, yoga, so all that stuff. But in my world, nothing brought my health to the next level when it comes to combating disease, infection, and having a medicine cabinet.
Yeah.
That is really what essential oils have been for me, is filling up my medicine cabinet with the things that my family and I need to be healthy. And then we just got hold of it, and it's been fun. It's been a fun journey.
That's really awesome. It's one of my one near and dear to me as a naturopathic doctor and Chinese medicine practitioner. I couldn't agree more. And it's such an underused in medicine, underused root of medicine, of the olfactory chain and direct connect to the brain. Yes. I know you'll like this. I studied for my medical boards with different different plants like rosemary and lavender. So different topics I studied with the actual plant and would smell it, and then went in to take the boards, and I felt like I was storing the information in different regions of my brain.
Oh, you do. And you make a good point. I mean, there's multiple facets to using essential oils. Again, you're talking about the typical aromatherapy. Our ancestors burn incense and leaves. I mean, that was what people did because they never had essential oils. I mean, let's kind of even go back a step.
Yeah.
When you go to the store or online and buy the liquid version of essential oils, that wasn't invented until the 9th century AD by Arab alchemists. Like steam distillation wasn't around 5,000 years ago. So our ancestors used to put herbs and spices and roots and bark into herbal extracts. That's basically what they did. And they allowed these plants to seep through olive oil and sesame seed to have a nice, aromatic healing benefit to it. But what we see now is relatively new in the timeline of humanity. And we're talking true medicinal effect. Like, what do you think? I mean, when I learned this, Doc, it blew my mind. What do you think combat medics used in World War I and World War II before the antibiotic, before the onset of Purell, before these antibacterial lotions and potions? We're talking essential oils were used in the World War to combat gangrene infection, like lavender, tea tree, lemongrass, oregano, clove.
Wow.
And so, like, what happened? Well, let me tell you, we got a little lazy and maybe a little great marketing where pharmaceutical companies said, hey, what if we give you the potency of all those essential oils, but you don't have to smell, you don't have to get messy, and all you do is take this white shiny pill. Boom, antibiotic came around the mid-40s. That's really what happened. Same thing for your hand sanitizers and same thing for all the other things that we use today. But ultimately, if you're looking for true plant-based medicine that you can ingest, that you can apply topically because they're transdermal. These essential oils will penetrate into the cellular level of your body just by applying them topically. Well, that can only be done through essential oils. You can't get that medicinal effect with supplementation or food. That's the potency of what I'm trying to equate here is if someone's trying to get that nice therapeutic effect of, let's say, Roman chamomile, you could drink chamomile tea, and I love it. We all do. But it'll take up to 20 to 30 bags of chamomile to get one drop. Same thing with blood sugar balancing. This will blow your mind, right? Yeah, you can consume cinnamon bark, but you'll have to consume like 2 tablespoons of cinnamon bark powder, which is a lot, by the way, to get the same effect of maybe 2 drops of cinnamon that you could put in your matcha green tea. And so you start thinking, wow, what is the true efficacy of these things? And ultimately what I've done, and we try to promote this in our books and our work, is we're trying to create a lifestyle where our body care, our cleaning products, once you start ridding and cleansing your life, and you know this more than anyone, the psychogenic aspects of disease and how that can affect you at a neurological level. And when you look at dementia, Alzheimer's, and mental illness like depression, anxiety, burnout, like who today in 2021 has not experienced some effect of trauma, of burnout, overwhelm? I mean, to have something at your disposal that isn't addictive forming, habit forming, that doesn't have any side effects if you use it right, to have that at your disposal is unbelievably empowering. And so this whole aspect of let's minimize the toxins that have an effect on our psyche, on our brain. Yeah. And that's really where in our upcoming book, The Essential Oils Apothecary, I wanted to land the plane for a minute on this Alzheimer's and dementia chapter specifically. And we have a chapter on substance abuse and depression and a chapter on stress and anxiety. But to let you know, look, the things that we are breathing in the air, like the true airborne pathogens that we need to worry about, the artificial fragrances, the phthalates, the VOCs that are being emitted from building materials and all those things, like what that does to the brain, causing brain inflammation, leaky brain. Yeah. Well, boy, oh boy, what if that means we can actually have an effect of how we feel, how we look, and maybe put ourselves in a situation where we're not going to develop dementia and Alzheimer's when we get older? That's the message that we're preaching here. And it's an empowering one for people.
Super, super exciting, so timely and very needed. You wrote in 2018, so you're talking about the Essential Oils Apothecary, which is your upcoming book, which I'm excited to help get the word out. Now, you wrote what became the #1 most sold aromatherapy book in the world in 2018. So why the new book? Like, what's changed in the last 3 years that motivated you to put this new book out?
Well, practically speaking, I only had so many pages to work with in my first book. No joke. My publisher says, look, you're going to break the binding here. So I had to decide what to choose, what not to choose. And to be transparent also, I've been learning a lot, Doc. I mean, At the point when I wrote my first book, it was 2016, 2017. I maxed out my understanding and knowledge. And then I went to aromatherapy school. Then I've spent just literally thousands of hours reading and researching and speaking and interviewing. And I got to this place where I elevated. I up-leveled. My understanding did. And the research up-leveled. There's been hundreds and hundreds of studies that have been done since that as well, right?
Yeah.
So the whole rising tide lifts all boats. You've up-leveled. You've interviewed me. You've challenged me. It's like this whole experience with the community that we're so blessed to be part of. And quite frankly, though, my first book, The Healing Power of Essential Oils, was a 101. It was by design. It was to help people get a good, firm grip. We summarized the entire first book into this new book into one chapter. Because look, let's condense it. Let's get you to the point where we'll get you up and running. So once we establish the 101, now we're like, okay. And between us, what really got me was, yes, we help people get the basics down, but the thousands, and I'm not kidding, thousands of emails, comments, chats, instant messages of people saying, but I have this. What do I do specifically? And then it hit me. And the real pandemic, the real issue we've had, the pandemics, I should say, of heart disease, the pandemic of cancer, the pandemic of diabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, the leading causes of death, which are mostly chronic conditions that are highly preventable, which is by definition of what a chronic disease is, everybody. It's a preventable condition that's highly treatable that has developed over years. Over and over and over, we started getting requests and, quite frankly, a plea for help. How do I manage this stuff? And that really was the impetus for this last book, is to be okay, is there anything? And what can we do to help people? And as I went through the research and my wife and I really started diving deep into this, it dawned on me, there's a lot of support out there in the medical literature. Unfortunately, no one's getting the word out. And what really shocks me, Doc, is as a whole, the medical community, the natural health community, very few communities are approaching chronic disease.
Yeah.
Meaning, bear with me on this. We hear Alzheimer's. Okay, that's a subtopic. We hear cancer, we hear diabetes, but what about as a whole? And that's what really motivated me to create a book that helps people manage chronic disease as a whole, holistically, because once you start on the chronic disease route, once the train gets moving, you're never getting off. You start with blood glucose, it develops into obesity. You start with chronic inflammation that leads to cancer. You start with dementia. Next thing you know, you're dealing with Alzheimer's. You start with stress, and now it's leading to substance abuse. The chronic disease and its diseases. And so what I'm looking at is not just one. It's not just cancer. Yeah. It's not just Alzheimer's. It's not just bone and joint disorders. It's not just arthritis. But did you know there's such an overlap between all of them? And to find somebody with an isolated chronic disease in their 60s or 70s is virtually impossible. It's like you have multiple. That's why most people in their 60s and 70s are on blood pressure meds, blood sugar meds, they're on depression meds, they're on whatever med.
Average
and it's
5. Yeah.
Right? For multiple diseases that are all chronic in nature, that all play into each other. And so maybe it was ambitious. Maybe some people say too ambitious, but my hope and prayer is that, especially from this talk, people don't think of heart disease as an isolated condition, because your blood glucose levels affects that. Your stress levels affects that. Your mental, emotional health affects that. And same thing with brain conditions. It's not like you just wake up with Alzheimer's. It's like you're pre-diabetic, or you're already diabetic, or you're on your way to cancer. And that's why ultimately, when you look at this whole thing, it shocked me that yes, you're going to find very, very few books for the layperson on, quote, chronic disease as a whole. And there literally isn't one book in the world that discusses how to use aromatherapy for that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, you know what? Perfect lead in, perfect next level on my first book. So long answer to a short question, but I've learned so much along the way.
Yeah.
And the blessing, if there is such a blessing, right, we could call it a blessing, of this 2020 health crisis, now 2021 health crisis, is that now people are talking about things that you and I have been preaching for 20 years, pre-existing conditions, comorbidities, the fact that now, right, blood glucose, diabetes, and obesity puts people at infinitely more risk of dying of the crisis that we're in. Yeah. And so we're thinking like, wow, right? People are now looking at their bodies holistically. And that I hope to bring more awareness to is that you cannot just isolate one condition, because, right, the foot bone's connected to the ankle bone, which is connected to the head bone.
We're whole beings. I know. I love that. You know, it is, I feel like the tagline, "The emperor wears no clothes," is kind of appropriate right now, in that you really hit it on the head on this whole component of, you know, now more than ever, these pre-existing conditions, like perhaps the death rate in the United States was so high because we actually have a metabolically sick population. Like, and nobody is talking about it except for here. And that's why I created this platform. You've got a book coming out on talking about chronic disease as the moniker, not the pieces and parts, and not this system or that, because it is all related. Like we have always talked about root cause, underlying conditions. And this, you really hit it on the head of, you know, this is the tie-in. So kudos. I can't wait to read this book. And get it out to as many people as possible. And, you know, that is one, it's just a natural lead in for me to ask you all watching and viewing, like, this is why we created What the Health. Please, if you think about your loved ones, your community, share this episode with them, because Dr. Z is going to give us some actionable items at the second part of the show. But it is very important that people get this information, because it's not coming from the mainstream media. It's not coming from public health. They've had 18 months, 20 months to educate people on what to do for your health. And yet it was not that. It was stay home and wash your hands. Like, it was bad policy. And so really, I love that. So you're saying in general, almost any chronic health condition, and I do want to put in a piece of that puzzle of the stats on kids now is staggering, that 54% of children now have some chronic illness. Yep. So it is happening earlier and earlier and earlier in life. People are getting sicker and sicker. Yep. And so it is like really important that we start putting the emphasis in our hands and educating ourselves with experts and with mentors and with sage advice that's research backed, that actually works in the real world. So we're going to lead in. I'm going to leave that there for you if you'd like to go somewhere there. Otherwise, I want to dive into some of the specifics of particular interest for me. But I think let's start on that meta level. Like, you really did set it up on, you know, you've got the book set up in chapters on different diagnoses or signs and symptoms, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And you know what got me is we created we created two different appendices, and one of which I found myself being repetitive every single chapter in that, yes, here, and just by the way, y'all, I'm very practical, is that essential oils are one piece. They're one tool in the tool kit. And this is what I've said many times, and this is what's repeated over, literally on purpose in the book. Because I know the book, some people are just going to go right into the libido and erectile dysfunction. By the way, maybe we could talk a little about sex, because sex is such a great indicator of how healthy you are. And someone who has a low sex drive, erectile dysfunction, libido concerns, that's the first sign, one of those nagging signs that you're chronically unwell, you're chronically inflamed. Like, that's why younger people have such a robust sex drive, is because they're typically healthier than someone in their 60s or 70s. And so maybe someone, and you might enjoy this being, in the blogosphere, Doc, is that the number one most popular search term on my website related to essential oils is essential oils for sex, which is fascinating because we get very few questions about it. People don't typically email us, but they're typing with their search. And anyway, say that to say, some people are going to go jump to the sex chapter, or they'll jump to the insomnia chapter, or they'll jump to the substance abuse depression chapter. But in each one, I have the same disclaimer. And why I want to point this out is that this was my aha moment, in that every one of these chapters, I have this mentality and this slogan, so to speak, of, hey, if you're going to use essential oils, but live the McDonald's fast food lifestyle, that's really like taking one step forward, but two steps back. That's worth repeating. If whatever you're doing, a supplement, an oil, a yoga, a Bible meditation, I don't care what it is. If you're doing that, but still living your fast food lifestyle, it really is like taking one step forward, but two steps back. So what I'm trying to do, which, by the way, I think aromatherapy, people in the aromatherapy world are maybe guilty of, maybe in other industries, because I'm seeing them drinking alcohol, smoking. I'm seeing them eating at fast food joints, but they're using their essential oils to cure them of diseases like that. That's not congruent. So what I did was, every chapter I outlined, okay, this is what you do for essential oils for sleep, sex, right? Brain health, Parkinson's. We have a chapter on that. But by the way, these other components are super important. And I had a bullet point. And for those of you who read books a lot, you see those, shaded background, like they call them call outs or sidebars. I had a sidebar for each chapter talking about what those other natural therapies are. And you know what? I kid you not. This is whether we're talking about stress or anxiety or Parkinson's and epilepsy, 95% were the same. Like, what do you do? It's always going back to, mind, body. It goes back to nutrition, proper movement. I don't even want to use the word exercise because that's a 4-letter F word to some people, but I want to say proper movement, because that's the other thing too. I don't think we are designed to exercise as we were designed to move. And that's another little thing we've learned from the blue zones, the groups with the highest rate of centenarians and highest life expectancy. None of them exercise. Why? Because their lifestyle is very active. They don't have time to exercise. So I go back having more of a plant-based lifestyle, actually, more plants, more fruits and veggies, the better. Relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, forgiveness. We talk a lot about forgiveness therapy. That's a big deal for people suffering with chronic pain and fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, forgiveness therapy. And so what I did was I created this, okay, here are your natural living tips, so to speak. But I feel that's important to mention in response to what you shared, Doc, is because there are certain things we all need to be doing, all of us. And that, by just doing those things, will help us all be at less risk of developing chronic conditions. And if someone has already started on the chronic disease train, those things, according to the research, will slow down the train, hopefully to the point where the train will actually stop, and then you can heal. And so my premise is this: you work on the lifestyle things, Go to the lifestyle gurus to help you that. Let me be your aromatherapy guru for a minute. And let me show you how to use the essential oils primarily to help with the root cause. But this is where I really want to help people with the symptoms. Because ultimately, yes, we all want to be cured of XYZ. But you know what? It's really the symptoms that rob us the abundant life. Yes, there's nothing good to say about having cancer. But at the end of the day, it's maybe the emotional, the mental, the sexual, just not abuse, but maybe abuse that cancer does to those areas of life. The pain, like it's not the cancer that really robs people of the abundant life. It's the fatigue, it's the irritability, it's the everything, pain, the pain, so much pain, right? Let's kick this opioid crisis in its teeth. So if I could do one thing, if I could help people start knocking off their list, check marking off the solution to their symptoms, then what I have found is now, and by the way, this is probably the best piece of advice you're ever going to get from this message that I'm giving you right now, is if I could help you get a quick win or two, if I could help you and your family members feel better now, just a little bit, sleep a little bit better, get a little bit more enjoyment, get a little more energy, get a little more, wow, I'm happy today. I'm not like down in the dumps. That right there will get you on the abundant life train where you're going to want to do those things that maybe take a little more energy, motivation, time, and money. Because ultimately, we need to be, in a sense, addicted to feeling good and doing things that make us feel better so we won't be tempted to fall off the wagon. And ultimately, I've been living this life for 18 years. I haven't had a cigarette in 18 years. I haven't had a Wendy's Frosty in 18 years. I haven't had a Coca-Cola in 18 years. I haven't had a McDonald's. My kids don't even know what McDonald's tastes like. And that's not to say anything other than my lifestyle doesn't allow that. Why? Because I don't want anything to do with that junk. But those things were what I used to live on. And I always joke, if I ever were to fall off the wagon, I'd have a cigarette and get a Frosty. That was what I would do in my days when I was suicidal. I was depressed. I was addicted to narcotics and I was an alcoholic. That was my treat, a cigarette and a Frosty after work. Well, that's not even in my lexicon anymore. It's not even in the realm of possibility. Why? Because through the years, I've known how good it is and how wonderful it feels to feel good. And so it might sound crazy and like, what is this guy talking about? But the problem is, as we develop chronic conditions, and by definition, a chronic condition starts in childhood, it lasts 6 to 12 months at least. And by the way, there is no universally accepted definition of what they even are, because in the United States, the CDC literally only lists 6, and then Canada lists like 15, 20. Australia has a bunch more. And so I started looking at this, like, really, what is this thing? And they all have inflammation as a root cause. They all have toxic overload burden as a root cause. They all take years and years to develop, and they all play on one another. And ultimately, like you said, at the root is a metabolic disorder where the body just can't even function properly. And so if I can help your body function better, and ultimately, quite frankly, that usually starts with getting a better night's sleep and not having pain. I mean, those are 2 quick things we could really, hopefully, remedy with essential oils and with lifestyle. Now you're going to be like, wow, I hope you start to think twice, and me too, what we eat now, what we drink now, how maybe we think twice about how we manage overwhelm and stress. So next time, and I do think there's going to be a next time, the 5th or the 6th wave of the pandemic comes by, or another crisis comes by, we will have emotional and mental clarity and strength to be able to process it so it doesn't put people at the position where they're overloaded and burdened.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of sobering down a little bit on purpose here, because I had a friend of mine literally take his life last year. The pandemic got so bad, father of 3, wonderfully successful chiropractor, and it all threw us through a loop. And it was just like, how did this happen? I mean, it was just the overwhelm. It was, more children are killing themselves right now than are dying of COVID. More people in Japan in 2020 died of suicide more than people dying of COVID. Like, what does that tell us? Is that these poor people were in a position where they weren't even able to properly process the overwhelm that was hitting them for a million reasons. I know it, the body, the health, the mental aspect, the financial aspect, it was like every day. Now you throw in social injustice, you throw in all kinds of cancel culture, you throw in political upheaval. How do we process this stuff? I'll tell you, here's a trick. Imagine, like you mentioned earlier on in your research, right? You talked about the direct pathway through the olfactory system. Did you know that when you inhale something, the olfactory system has no thalamic relay? Unlike pain, unlike any other sensation, which has to be interpreted by the brain. That's why when you stub your toe or prick your finger with a pin, there's that split second and a half before you feel pain. There is no split second between when you smell something and the impact it has on your limbic system, which is your mood, your memory, your emotions. So if you want a quick fix to an overwhelming situation, I recommend getting out like lime essential oil or bergamot, orange, lemon. Notice the trend, the citrus oils, which have all been shown to have a GABA type of neurotransmitter producing, serotonin producing antidepressive activity. So that will help your brain. Like, okay, stop for a second. Stop. Let me just feel a little bit better. Let me just kind of calm this craziness. Like bergamot shown helping anxiety, like stopping a panic attack in its tracks. Maybe citrus isn't your flavor. I'll tell you, most people respond very well to citrus. Maybe it's going back to lavender or chamomile or some of the tree oils. And when I was doing more and more research for my book, especially in the wake of 2020, one of the worst things people did was stay inside, because we need to be outside as much as humanly possible. Why? Because the trees emit volatile organic compounds, cypress, sandalwood, frankincense, myrrh, pine, fir oils. Like these trees emit volatile organic compounds, which ground us, center us, reduce stress and anxiety, boost production, energy. It's like, that's why when you go outside and you hang out in the forest with your family, or maybe you go to a park, you feel better. I mean, it's clinically proven. It's called forest bathing. I talk about that in the book. And so maybe you tap into this stuff a little bit, but having these tools at your disposal are so empowering, because ultimately we have the ability to bring the healing power of being outside indoors. And then you start to flip this thing on its head, where next thing you know, you're feeling better, you're responding better to stressors, you're sleeping better, your sex drive is back, you don't have to go through 5 pots of coffee to get through the day. I'm not joking here. I mean, people, you don't have to go from opioid to opioid. Like, you're maybe getting to a position where you feel like you're in control anymore. And now that victim mentality comes off you, comes off me, comes off us. And we're like, you know what? I could do this. I could do this. And we share this message and people respond. I just had an email from a woman, precious woman, who said she tried to take her life last month. She overdosed. She was in a coma for 4 days. She woke up livid that she didn't die, not having any purpose, looking for purpose. She gets this random email from me and she said, you know what? I got this email from you and I'm taking it from God. I'm taking it that God sent me an email through you.
Yeah.
And you know what she said? I'm going to go through this information and I'm hoping to find some purpose. I'm hoping to find some peace. I'm hoping to find some relief from my pain. Like,
that's awesome.
We don't get that every day, but that's the effect that hope can have. That's the effect that solutions can have on people when you realize that there is potentially a solution, an antidote to whatever it is that might be ailing you. And no, please don't discount, and please don't say I'm saying like there's an oil for a cure for everything. No. I'm just, please re-listen to what I just said. This lifestyle that we live, that Doc lives, we are living out something that's wonderfully empowering.
Truly we are. We are living at an amazing time. I love the beginning of that component of getting some wind in somebody's sails. So some of the wins on some of the symptoms. So I did not take anything you said there, Dr. Z, as like, this is the one aroma that serves them all, right? But it is definitely complementary, and it can get some wind in the sail so that you're then making more of the lifestyle changes. Because I think oftentimes people get way overwhelmed because, like you have said, you're living at 18 years. And, I started changing my diet in 1996 and I'm still working at it, but it's a continual process. So you do what you can. This is a great way to help support that. I love also the statement that you made a little while back of, put your nose in the rose. And rose essential oil and roses in general was my wife Soraya's favorite thing to do. Anytime we would see roses, we would stop and smell the rose. Yep. And that was the aroma that she wore on a daily basis. So it's like near and dear to my heart, like on a very cellular level. And, and then you come to find out that, rose essential oil actually heals PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Like this is like age-old sage information now in a concentrated, really pure distilled varietal that we can access like really all over the globe, which is so exciting to have. Like they're relatively affordable. You can get them a lot of places, and maybe you can talk about quality of oils as well, just on that topic. But in particular, the components of trauma, sorry on your friend, and anybody listening. I mean, everybody's lives we've been touched this year. And if more than ever, we realize how interconnected we really are. And again, you never know, that email comes in at the right time, at the right moment, and can be a game changer, a life changer. And like, imagine, I hope she stays in touch with you to let you know, like, what's the outcome. But it's so inspiring to hear, because that you're really paying it forward with the information, with your energetics, the way that you've up leveled and your vibration, and just coming on the show, sharing what you've learned with our listeners and viewers. And, we've got a really great active community of folks that tune in. And, I know that they're sharing this information out because now more than ever, my daughter works on a teen suicide hotline. And I mean, the stats are staggering. They've gone through the roof, like you shared. And so it's real. It's high stakes of what's happening out there. And we are all in it together. It's not just a hashtag or a tagline, but it's real. We're losing people. Folks aren't having a purpose. They're getting lost in the variety of everything that is happening, and suicide rates are going up. Anxiety, depression rates are through the roof. So we've got to take responsibility. Responsibility. We have the ability to have a response, and this is really should be in everyone's toolkit. I got my kids diffusers for the holiday, and awesome. Get them different blends to start, diffusing into their environments. They live all over the country now, and they all thanked me because they feel better when they do it. The lovely recommendation on the citrus as well. So that's a really good one. If you're feeling stuck or just kind of into that darkness. So, wow, that was a ton of information, Dr. Z.
I want to empower people with, when it comes to chronic disease, and we're touching base on the big ones. I mean, let's throw in fatty liver. We already talked about, I didn't mention COPD, heart disease, right? Cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia. You see at the core is this unrestrained chronic inflammation that has psychogenic aspects to it. All right, my good friend, Dr. Tony Jimenez, integrative oncologist, he shared with me that at the root, cancer is an emotional disorder. That's why all of his patients that go through his clinics go through emotional recall healing. And he has not, and I've heard this from multiple oncologists, integrative, natural, conventional, is the emotional psychogenic aspects of disease. And so now more than ever, and we're seeing this. I mean, the Major League Baseball, the mental health crisis there. I'm like, look at the headlines. Look at the headlines right now, all across the board. If there's something we could do to hijack the brain, if there's, we call it biohacking, right? If there's something we could do to stop the onslaught And that includes the environmental toxins that people are breathing. So please, everyone, whether it's my favorite, which is an air doctor, or you get whatever molecule, or whatever, which one you want, get an air purifier. You have to breathe good air in your home, and make sure you spend a good quality time outside. And I get it. I'm working right now. I'm sitting down in my office, in my little studio. Like, I am going to be very intentional today to be outside. And so when I go on a conference call, hey, here's a little tip for everyone who maybe you're like me and you enjoy your Zoom mullet. You know, you have your business up front, your party on the bottom, right? When it comes to Zoom. So go outside on Zoom. If you're working from home, you don't need to have your video on. And one thing I always say is I'm mobile, which I am because I'm walking. But I will rarely take a Zoom call with my video on now because I got to be outside. I need my fresh air. I can't be sitting down all day inside every day. So these little tips will help you. Like, go outside, make sure you have your mental health breaks in your calendar. Like, we're going on a family walk today. We have to do this stuff. And the thing is, I want to do this stuff. I feel better. And you have that available to you. So ultimately, I want to encourage you all with this. Is not only are you going to feel better, like literally feel better, sleep better, make love better, eat better. Like, you're not going to be tempted to have that fifth piece of cake. Like, I'm promising you little things that the brain will be wired where depression, anxiety, stress triggers unhealthy eating. It triggers really self-hating self-hating activities. Like, you'll be surprised at you questioning, well, maybe I shouldn't binge watch this fifth episode on Netflix now. Like, you'll find yourself wanting things like, you know what, I've had enough screen time, or I've had enough this, I've had enough that. But you focus on the mental health aspects of things. And that's why I love to diffuse these essential oils, but also body care. We include them. We add essential oils in our body care. We make our own, not using conventional cleaners, which is key. I mean, if you want to get in that sympathetic fight or flight, use bleach. I mean, that's just like, that's toxic to the brain. Women, please stay away from your normal formaldehyde nail polish. That's one of the worst things for you. People don't realize that. Lipstick, you're licking it, you're digesting it. Like, little things we don't think about that you can make your own or buy natural versions of it. But ultimately, once you start again on this train and this anti-inflammatory lifestyle, the pain goes away, the sleep gets better, you are infinitely less at risk of high cholesterol, high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes. And you might be like my mentor who's 78 years old, who feels great, who could still bench press 250 pounds and on zero drugs. Yeah. And see, that I'm grateful for having a mentor, a man in my life that's shown me a way of living and guided me like, look, you can get old and age well. So I want to leave you all with that, is that maybe you need to do some damage control, and that's fine. Maybe you need to do some damage control and spend some time reversing some of the damage that we've done with our eating habits. But one thing we can do, and so important, is guarding our heart, guarding our mind, and guarding our emotions above all else. And that will produce infinite benefits.
Yeah, I love that. Guard our heart, guard our mind. Your third one there?
Emotions, guard our emotions.
Emotions and our emotions. That's
or
really
soul.
Sage,
guard your soul.
Sage advice. Okay, so, I mean, it's really hard to come back from there, Dr. Z, but I'm going to bring it back into, what is your favorite essential oil for brain health? Because I've got a lot of folks, tuning in around with that particular. Now, we did lay it out like this is all interconnected. They know that. The folks that I'm interviewing on What the Health, we are laying it together. There's that. And then also tying this down to our connection to the planet and nature. Like you talked about, you guys are going, get out in nature, have the gratitude for the planet, but also making non-toxic stuff and bringing that into your house. Like, it's really, you're talking about changing the way the economy is set up so that it's actually sustainable and actually in a thriving fashion, so that as our health improves, the planet improves. And it's that interdynamic and interrelatedness that we've got going there that will help expedite the change that we're needing to see happen out here.
Yeah. I mean, that's to answer that first question about what's the number one. My instinct was to say frankincense, because it's rich in sesquiterpenes that have been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier. And that's really important. Very few drugs can successfully, without side effects, cross the blood-brain barrier, which is this fatty substance that protects the brain. I mean, fat's really our friend. And so you need something that's lipid soluble, like an essential oil. And that's why that's why frankincense has been shown to help with glioblastoma, brain cancer, cerebral edema, other things, just applying it topically, right? To always dilute. Again, I have the conversions in my book, so you can look at that. But going back to the pine and the tree oils, I want to really kind of land on there for a minute, because we don't talk enough about them, and especially in America. And obviously, we're in a situation where we use what's available to us. So whether someone goes from a multi-level marketing distributor or their favorite Amazon source, these starter kits you buy, essential oils, they typically carry the same kind of oils. Like typically you'll find lemon, lavender, eucalyptus, clove, like the core. You won't find as much the tree oils. And I think that's just because of how that's just America, where you go outside of America and you see a variety of different oils that other cultures use. And I go back to Japan and forest bathing, like pine and cypress, and these tree oils are part of their culture and have been for years. We maybe don't have that sacred relationship with trees as other cultures do. And so I want to bring that back and be like, look, we need to look at the tree oils specifically for overall brain health, and they could help. I mean, they could help with a variety of ways. And the thing about, and I think we talked about that in your recent summit about essential oils being acetylcholinesterase inhibitors. And that's important because when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia, there's virtually no approach that works very well. And there's these experimental drugs that are getting the FDA in trouble as we speak. But ultimately, we're dealing with a lack of acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter that the brain needs to function properly. And people that are aging and with Alzheimer's and dementia have a lack of this. So if you can create a drug that inhibits the enzyme from breaking down acetylcholine, there's more acetylcholine in the brain. Well, good theory, but in practice, it doesn't really work as well without side effects. But essential oils have that same effect on acetylcholine that drugs do. And I'm going to list off a couple that work that we know, like lemon myrtle, lemon balm, Australian and black pine, Oregon ash, red river gum, again, going back to the tree oils. And of course, thyme and sage and oregano work as well. But to point out, there are a lot of different things that we could do when it comes to brain health, but because of the olfactory system, I want to focus on the inhalation aspect of it. Like, you're not going to ingest essential oils to help with your brain like you would ingest essential oils to help with cancer, or let's say arthritis or blood sugar. Like, ingesting essential oils for those conditions, it can have a profound effect. But brain health, brain olfactory system, no thalamic relay, right? Going back to what we just talked about. Yeah. So you want to really focus on the inhalation benefit. But here's the cool thing. I want to leave people with this. Making your own body care, or if you want to cheat, a good cheat is get non-toxic, non-scented body care, which could just be straight up shea butter or coconut oil. I don't know. Like, what do you want to moisturize your body after the shower with? But if you were to get non-toxic, like, completely organic, non-toxic, no parabens, no synthetic fragrances, unscented versions of them at the store, you could just put a few drops of essential oil into your bottle, and you just kind of made your own essential oil version of that, right? So we always stick with the non-scented version of things, and we just scent them. And you could scent them with a nice mixture. My favorite is Douglas fir and orange. Ooh. Absolutely love how that works, because orange has that wonderful antidepressive aspect like we talked about, but Douglas fir, it has a citrus undertone to it, but it brings you back to those true healing tree oils that we keep on going back to. Other people love other different varieties and other different blends. Frankincense and lime is another good blend. And I'll leave you with that, is that you got to find what works for you and makes you healthy, makes you happy. And, during the 2020 health crisis, I found myself really falling into bergamot and lime. And that was just a blend that I used. And it was at a real critical place where, crap was hitting the fan. Everyone was freaking out. And I went back to this blend, which so happened to be a blend that I used to help me through pretty stressful season of my life. But because of neuroplasticity, because of the imprint on my brain, inhaling that during the pandemic brought me back. And that's why, by the way, when you smell Thanksgiving dinner, you go back to when you're a teenager thinking of grandma. That's why you mentioned about PTSD and how you can use essential oils to help heal that. But also certain essential oils, certain smells can trigger anxiety, stress, post-traumatic stress because of maybe a situation that you were surrounding yourself when you inhaled that. So the power of smell brings you back to the actual emotional release, the neurological release of what you experienced when you first smelled it. So for you, rose has wonderful, wonderful memories to it. Yeah. But there are other people who have negative emotions around rose, especially if maybe you had roses on the table when you got that divorce court proceeding. Like that right there is going to screw up your ability to smell rose forever. Unless you can heal from it. And I'm being very serious because some people inhale a certain essential oil and they automatically get anxiety and they don't realize repressed memories, emotional, stressful trauma, or they're like, what is wrong with this oil? They think it's bad. No, maybe something, right? So you have to find what works for you. And me, I have now multiple blends that I go to, my anchors that have helped me through certain season. And I have, for me, and it's common for a lot of people, is lavender. You know how people call smoking is a gateway drug? Lavender is oftentimes the gateway aromatherapy for a lot of people. And so when someone is enjoying their healing journey, they're starting to go to, let's say they go to Whole Foods or their natural health food store for the first time ever. And they're like, what is this gluten-free stuff? They smell lavender. It's like this infancy, this onset of healing, this onset of natural health. You see a lot of people responding well to lavender. Oftentimes is because it's the first one you smelled and it's like, oh, this is cool. Me too. I'll never forget 18 years ago, starting my health journey, I washed my hands with pure lavender soap. Even today, lavender gives me such wonderful memories. It's an anchor. It's a strength to me. So if you don't know what those are, well, here's a tip. Go to the natural health food store, smell a bunch of oils and see like what gives you that, like, that takes you down a notch, that maybe makes you feel better smell. And I can't discount the importance of synergy blends. It is really the design and the wisdom of God to combine things together. And the long and the short of it is this. We know that isolated compounds are effective. Like that's what eucalyptus menthol, that's what your Bengay is. They take the menthol out, they fractionate it out, and then they make a drug around it. Well, the studies have shown over and over and over again, isolated compounds versus all the essential oil compounds together as a whole, they can't compare. And similarly, certain essential oils just blend well together. And you'll see a lot of people going back to the frankincense and myrrh, right? The Jesus story that people talk about. Like there's a reason for that, by the way. It's just not happenstance. And you see how certain citrus oils blend well and how floral oils blend well. Research has shown that especially anti-inflammatory compounds of, let's say, for example, let's go to overwhelm. I'll leave you with this. This blew my mind. Orange oil and vanilla. So they had a study
it's like
that
blew sickle.
Exactly. So these poor people, God bless your heart and all the hearts of people who take their $50 Subway card and they become a scientific experiment. These people subjected themselves to an impossible, hopeless task. Right? So 15, 30, or 20 people in one group, 15, 20 people in another group, they were assigned an impossible task. And the impossible task, coincidentally enough, was to solve racism. Like you can't solve that in a room with 20 other people. So they put these two people in this isolated clinical sterile setting. One group had nothing but the task that was hopeless. And the other group had the hopeless task, but the creamsicle smell. And what they found was that the people with the aromatherapy, of course, they couldn't solve the task because that's an unsolvable task, but they did not feel hopeless. They did not feel down, depressed, sad. They weren't agitated or frustrated like the other people who were just like, this sucks. Like, this task sucks. This environment sucks. I don't want to be here. And a creative, they're doing hopelessness evaluations. Like, again, going back to what we talked about, who hasn't dealt with some level of hopelessness this last year and a half?
Yeah.
Here's a quick hack: orange and vanilla. And I literally have never met one person, I'm sure there are, that don't like that smell or that flavor. It's wonderful. I love it. I just made it for my kids. I made like a homemade orange Julius for the kids. Orange juice, orange essential oil, a little bit of vanilla, stevia, coconut milk. It's heaven. So anyway, that's a little tip. If you're starting to feel hopeless, if you have a helpless situation, a friend of mine just got a divorce notice from his wife the other day, like devastated, absolutely devastated. I'm not saying this is going to heal it or help restore your marriage or bring your job back or help resurrect the business that just died. But promise you, trust me, get some orange, get some vanilla, put in your diffuser, add it with some coconut oil, put it on your body after the shower. You will feel better. And if it gives you, if your devastation or if your trauma dropped you down 10 notches, what I'm giving you will help maybe lift you up 2 or 3. That's a lot better than being in the pit.
Yeah.
Right? I'm being realistic here. This is proven to reduce the effects of hopelessness, helplessness, and help you feel better, regardless of what we're dealing with. That's why so many Alzheimer's patients and people in nursing home respond well. And last of all, don't forgo touch. Going back to brain health, we need physical touch. And over in the research, especially with Alzheimer's, dementia patients, talks about aromatherapy, hand massage. Going back always to the citrus oils or lavender, oils that help reduce agitation. Give yourself or your lover, a friend or family member, a little foot rub, neck rub, hand rub. Just that physical touch can do wonders for your mental and emotional and spiritual well-being.
Dr. Eric Zielinski, thank you so much. Everybody, we've got the author of the Essential Oils Apothecary. It's coming out with Rodell Books, September 7th. We can find them at eoapothecary.com. If you like today's show, and Dr. Z dropped so many knowledge bombs there, go out, give the 5-star review, say exactly what you got out of it, and share it. Those reviews make a difference. It's how people find us. We are here to help you, your families, your communities. What the Health here on the Contact Talk Radios, Tuesdays, 2 to 3 Pacific Standard. See you next week, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Z.